Alright, this video is going to be a little bit different. This is a topic that I don't normally talk about, and I'm kind of reluctant to because I'm not sure what kind of audience there is for it. But when I made my video on Jesse Ventura's bullshit conspiracy theory, somebody had commented, hey, why don't you do an Austro-libertarian refutation of the reptilians? The reptilians are just very hilarious to me. I think that's like the most fun conspiracy theory. The Jesse Ventura episode on reptilians, which I subsequently did watch after I made that video, which to Ventura's credit, he basically just calls it all bullshit. I mean, he interviews David Icke, and he basically says, let me see a reptile, let me see a reptile, and he just, David Icke, you know, not that I hate David Icke or anything, but he could not really offer anything very definitive other than say, well, I have a book that explains it in 700 pages. And he's like, oh, you should be able to just show me. So good on Jesse Ventura, and also I liked his point at the end. Like, okay, there are bad people in the world. We have enemies, but they're human, and it's just kind of passing the buck along to pretend like it's these reptilians and not ourselves or other humans. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this. This is kind of just a really interesting fact or experience or a little bit of information. If this story starts to sound familiar, I'd love to hear other people talk about it. But I first heard about the reptilian stuff probably in 2004 or 5. I was in college, and I heard about it through a guy named Stuart Swerdlow, if you want to look him up. I believe the guy is a pure hookster, because I've seen him on Jesse Ventura, and he wasn't talking about reptilians, so he's the kind of guy that whatever is kind of on the market in terms of conspiracy theorists, that's what he has for sale. So if Nostradamus is popular, then he knows about that, but if reptilians are popular, then he knows about that. He's kind of that type of character. But anyway, he was talking about the reptilians at length. And his version of the reptilian theory, a conspiracy theory, which I don't know if this is the only reptilian conspiracy theory, is that there were humans are not native to Earth, that we're an invasive species to this planet, and that there were two advanced spacefaring civilizations that attempted to colonize the Earth. One were the mammalians, and the other were the reptilians or the reptoids. And some people distinguish between the two, although for the life of me I can't figure out what the difference is. Maybe the reptoids look human, I don't know. And it might even be that the colonization of Earth happened in the context of an interstellar war between these two species, that they had a conflict and that Earth was maybe kind of like the neutral zone or whatever. Anyway, they came to this planet and they terraformed the planet, and they terraformed the animal life to be of use to us, and that's where like domesticated animals come from. Of course, these societies were technologically advanced, and the mammalians founded a society in what is in mythology known as Atlantis. So all the Atlantis myths are originating from this mammalian, the center of mammalian civilization. The Atlantis would be someplace in the Atlantic or in Europe or the Mediterranean. The reptilians established their part of the colony on a no longer existent continent called, I've heard it called two things, Lemuria and also the continent of Mu, M-U. Now Lemuria is in Milevina Blavatsky's book, The Secret Doctrine. It has something to do with the Aryans or whatnot. I have that book. I've never read it. I'm kind of really creeped out by it. I don't think I'll ever actually touch it. Mu, I've never heard about, and geologically speaking, there's no evidence for such a continent, at least within the last, like, since Pangea or something. So, basically, they had kind of a sort of an uneasy truce that eventually erupted into a full-scale war. Since they were technologically advanced, this war was absolutely devastating, and it almost destroyed the planet. And as a result of this war, the reptilians retreated underground, and basically the origin of all the hell, underground, satanic, reptilian, snake, serpent myth originates from their retreat into the core of the planet, or at least under the mantle or whatever. It's not really clear. And that the mammalians basically lost all their technology and somehow became us, and maybe even interbred with like chimpanzees or something, and we're the hybrids. And then from there, apparently, the reptoids started shapeshifting into humans by drinking their blood, and that's who all the politicians are and everything. Okay, it's crazy. It's a lot of fun. You know, I didn't think much of it. I still don't think much of it other than it's kind of weird. But then, not long after I first heard this conspiracy theory, and this is where it does start to get a little bit more bizarre, I was just starting to get into YouTube. It was long before I ever made videos or was looking up anarcho-capitalism. But you know, I would just search things, and I would search nostalgic things that I remember from my childhood. You know, television shows and the like that, you know, they're not on TV anymore. I don't have DVDs or VHS of them. Although that's slowly changing. You know, I would just go and look up old cartoons, DuckTales or Tailspin or whatever. And when I was very young, in kindergarten, there was a show on television that I watched called, and anyone who's seen this show, please let me know if this is ringing any bells for you. It was a show called The Mysterious Cities of Gold. It was a cartoon. And it was a very, very unusual show. Now, at the time, I just watched it as a child, and I just thought, this is TV, I'm watching it. Later, when I would reflect back, I kind of realized there were not very many shows like this. Firstly, it was not episodic. Almost all children's television, and this would have been on Nickelodeon. They didn't have Nick Jr. back then, but this was during the day, because I had kindergarten in the AM, and then I'd be to my babysitters around noon, and I'd be watching this, you know, 1, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This would be preschooler, kindergartner time on television. This is not the more mature Nickelodeon programming. This is what would today be Nick Jr. This is like Blue's Clues block of time. It's not episodic. It has a narrative for the entire story, and the story focuses on takes place during the conquest of the New World by the Spanish, I believe in the 16th century, and it revolves around a motley crew of explorers. One kid, a couple adults, a couple kids. One of the kids is Spanish. One of them is, 2 or 3 of them are Native Americans. It starts in Spain. They come to Mesoamerica. I know South America. I don't know if they spend any time in Central America. It's not really important. And they are basically looking for El Dorado. They're looking for the lost city of gold. And every episode is them kind of pursuing this goal. It's a really unusual show. For one, there's full frontal nudity in the show. Like the little kids go swimming and stuff naked, and it was on TV, and I remember thinking, holy crap, they can't, what? But I don't know, back then the censorship must not have been as good. I don't know. But that's kind of a side issue. The main point is, as I was going back on YouTube, I was, you know, kind of rewatching elements of this show, and for a while the actually entire series was posted on YouTube. You could watch every episode on YouTube. I don't believe that's the case anymore, but there were sections of it. The plot line of the show was basically they come and they're looking for El Dorado, and at first they're just finding these very old Mesoamerican, you know, Inca, pre-Inca, Moche ruins that are all abandoned. There's not much to them. But as they get closer and closer to what they think is El Dorado, they eventually stumble upon a highly, highly, highly advanced subterranean alien species. So it turns out in the show, and these aliens kind of become the antagonists in the show, that there is this spacefaring, super technologically advanced race of aliens that live underground, that have been hibernating because of a past cataclysm. Now, at some point in the show, this kind of whole plot arc is revealed, the kind of mystery of what's been happening. You know, these are Spanish explorers in the 16th century. They don't know about aliens or space travel. this stuff is not, you know, they don't really understand it. They do a flashback, which the flashback was shown on YouTube. I don't know if you can still find it, but it's called like Mysterious Cities of Gold Explained, and it says that there used to be two highly advanced antagonistic societies. One was called Atlantis, and one was in the Pacific Ocean on Mu. And they had a devastating war with each other, and the one side, and the aliens who live underground, they have pointy ears and forked tongues, although they don't have scales. So they look humanoid, but not. Lost and had to retreat underground. So basically, long story short, as soon as I saw that, I made a connection between the two. And maybe this is just because humans see patterns and like to make connections. But I immediately thought, this is exactly the same story that Stuart Swerdlow was talking about. Now, Mysterious Cities of Gold, I looked into it, was originally actually produced in France in, I want to say, the very early 80s. I mean, I was watching it in 1988. It probably was made in like 84 or 5. I'm not 100%. And the Stuart Swerdlow thing I was watching, he made that just in the late 90s. And so the only conclusion I could draw is that, well, a conspiracy theorist would say, or someone who wanted to believe in this would say, oh, well, that proves it's true, and you know they're both reporting it. How could they both report it and have it be true? No, but I think what it does suggest is actually very interesting also, and that is there's some kind of common source material that very disparate sources are drawing from. So Stuart Swerdlow, whatever his history is, and this French director in the 80s heard the same story, which is interesting because I've never heard this story. This is not something that seems there in the mythology, in the normal books. I don't know a novel where this came from. But they're both basically talking about a very similar, to the point that it's likely not just a coincidence type of narrative. I want to say narrative. I don't want to say history, but a story about something that happened. And I find that very interesting. I don't know what the source of such a story would be. I don't know why it is escaping mainstream attention. It's kind of weird how society is, where there's stuff that in society we all kind of know and are aware of, even if it's not being blurted out all the time. You know, there's some things like, you know, Hercules gets redone on TV all the time. So, you know, people know about Hercules, and Troy people know about, which I'm going to have to do another video about Troy. That's a different story. But there's other stuff that's not put out there all the time, yet people are still aware of. But this story is not something that I think people are aware of. This is not something I ever heard about. And it would be one thing if one was talking about it and not the other, because then you'd say, well, he just imagined it or he's making it up. But then where is the initial source? Now, maybe Stuart Swerdlow saw a mysterious series of cities of gold, and that's where he's getting the story. But I don't think Stuart Swerdlow is the fountainhead of the reptilian stories, because I think that they predate him and they're more widespread than that. But their similarity with this Mysterious Cities of Gold cartoon makes me think that the guy who made that cartoon was aware of this idea, of this narrative, and he was not only aware of it, he was compelled enough by it for some reason to put it explicitly in a show that was aired on television throughout the entire world. And I looked, you know, this show was shown in France, it was shown throughout Europe, and it was shown for a brief period in the United States. I don't think it was syndicated for very long. It probably has about 60 episodes, 64. You can buy it on DVD at this point. I'm getting to the point where I'm so fucking rich that I would do it. Not really, but I don't know. For a couple of days after I kind of put the connection, I was really wigged out about it. I'm not wigged out about it now, but I find it very interesting. I can speculate reasonably on what might be the cause of this, but it is very interesting to me. So if anyone has any idea, has anyone else ever noticed this, any other possible explanation? I'm saying the most likely explanation is not that this is true and that, you know, they're describing the same thing, but it's interesting that there would be what I like to call esoteric mainstream ideas there. That's kind of an oxymoron, but you know, there are some aspects of society that are esoteric that there's certain groups in society know about and the rest of society doesn't know about. And I think, you know, and like the classic examples like the Freemasons or the Rosicrucians or something like that, the secret societies. Um, this is something like that. There is a constituency within the population, and it seems to be transatlantic, at the very least, that is familiar with this story, this narrative, and they're compelled enough by it to put it out there. But at the same time, the vast majority of the people are completely oblivious to it, which I think is an interesting dichotomy where you have some people who are really tuned in to know about it, and then most people who are completely oblivious to it. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the reptilian conspiracy. This is what I'm really interested to hear what other people have to say or think about it. So let me know.